be fast-paced today. I'm a very fast speaker. I talk a lot, and the reason why is I play a role a lot of times in my job called the incident commander, and I deal with disasters on the fly, and so I get thrown in, and the ability of just being able to take control and initiate the process to respond to whatever that incident be. Is there a type of incident that I have to deal with that could be this, that, or this on any day of the week at any time? And so it's very flexible in that process. As he said, by day, I'm an emergency manager for the University of Washington. I deal with all global operations for the university. So this week, we're finishing off finals, and next week at the university, and so then I have about 1,400 students going overseas to lots of different countries to go educate themselves, or go play, as I like to call it sometimes. I'm referred to as Dr. Doom and Gloom sometimes at the university, because I always bring up the negative things about certain types of trips. But I also help maintain and manage the responses to the emergency stuff for researchers and faculty and business operations for the university around the world. To give you an idea of what that is, we have one organization that does approximately 200 flights a month to Africa of researchers going back and forth. We have programs in over 50 to 70 different countries on average every day. And I deal with, this past 3 days, I can tell you I've been dealing with Micronesia, Malaysia, Cambodia, Zimbabwe, Malawi, Turkey, and Jordan. This is the docket that I have right now in the past 48 hours. That's why I've not been sleeping much. But by night, and when I say this obviously by day by night, I do things all the time constantly. I help run an organization called Crisis Commons. And we're an organization that helps connect people and technology to help for disaster response and crisis response. And so I kind of mix and mingle all that together. So we'll be talking about it. I have a bunch of little slides I'll slide through fast. You're welcome to ask me any questions later. I have some cards. You can find me on email. Anyway, I'm happy to help in any way I can. So we'll start. A couple of things. This is what I normally like to do. I ride a enduro motorcycle. I tend to like to go back roads and get lost and have very little connectivity. Unfortunately, my mom made me buy a Spot when I was a teenager. And so there's this little tracking device at the back of my bike that beams up a signal, and it's the first version of the Where's My iPhone app. But they couldn't wipe it or talk to me. Never had to use it, though. But this is what I normally would like to be doing, especially today on a beautiful day in Seattle. But I have a broken foot, and I wish I could have said that I broke my foot doing this. Instead, I broke my foot working. It's been a stress fracture for the past 20 years that finally cracked or something. With all the work that I've done in hurricanes and disasters and fires and stuff. So my doctor's like, yeah, you really broke it. One bone into 4 pieces. So some of the things that I have done, though, that are important to understand, the dedication that I have is just to show this, but also of many, many other people around the world. And that's where I hope to encourage your dedication to supporting the humanitarian efforts of things around the world. For my vacation 2 years ago, I decided to take 3 weeks off, rent an RV, grab a couple of buddies of mine that I've never met before face-to-face, only virtually through disaster responses. And we crammed ourselves into this little 27-foot camper, and we drove about 4,500 miles. We went to a bunch of cities, and we talked about technology, integrating it with disasters. We met with fire departments, police stations, emergency managers. We even met with NASA. We met with Google. I got to sleep overnight in the Google parking lot underneath the sign that says no sleeping allowed. It was really cool. Google has really cool bicycle security guards in the middle of the night. It's fun to play laser tag with them with the laser out the window. Not something you want to do publicly too much, but we're having fun. It was a total blast. It was a lot of work, but what it was is the ability to help integrate technology so that we can reduce many other challenges, those challenges that include operational costs. With technology, there's no reason for us to have 3,340-some counties in the United States all building tools for the exact same thing duplicatively. We can all do it together because technology can do it. And as a matter of fact, we can do it for the whole globe to help reduce that. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. But this was kind of the first start of that, of the first time we did it. I'm hoping to do Europe next year. So is my wife. She said she'd like to be a co-pilot this time and join me in a trip around Europe for 3 weeks and just cram-packed adventure. How many of you have an iPhone that looks like this? Yeah? Do you know what all those apps are? They're tools, they're capabilities. My nephew's phone, they're all games. Kind of funny, I wiped my nephew's phone last night through remote wipe. I haven't heard his call yet. He's not going to be happy. But these applications are here for us to be able to use things. You guys use them for normal things. You use them for business. You use them for commercialization, how to make money, how to increase your customers, how to increase your capability. I use them for how to find people, how to help people in disaster, how to overcome a challenge that people are having during a disaster. How can we use that capability? How do I get information from it? With my day job, I have to monitor so many different countries every day. My calendar is blocked out for the first hour and a half called SITREP, Situational Awareness. And I read through about 1,500 different RSS feeds from around the world of just going, what's going on, what's going on, what's going on. I listen to the State Department briefing. My colleague who sits next to me on the other side of the wall hates it because he hears the press briefing every day. He's like, I don't care what's going on over there. Can you turn it off? And I normally wear headphones, but you have so much information coming through, you have to process it. It's important to make sure that you understand that those tools are there, but how do we adapt and change? We have people who are always willing to help us in times of disasters, but when Monday morning comes around, it kind of weans. They go back to life. End of the world. It stops. It's back to normal. There's still many thousands of people without power in New York City after Hurricane Sandy. Anybody know remember Hurricane Sandy was? How long ago was that? Do you think people in Seattle would be outraged if Seattle City Light couldn't get power to them? Think of West Seattle lights. If there's no power in West Seattle, we'd have just war going on. That's important. How do we harness this technology in this virtual environment to do that? But the challenge is we want to make sure that this is not what people feel like. And when I say people, I have two different types of family people. So I love those personas there. This is not Penny. This is emergency manager, government worker who's scared to death of going, okay, I got a tweet. People could see that. People could assume that I'm saying something for the government, and then they can come after me. I can get in trouble by my boss. I can make someone embarrassed. I can get fired. Actually, no, you can't, unless you do something stupid, just like you would if you did it over the phone or on a fax machine or through an email. It's the exact same rules. It's the exact same. You're just adding social media to it. But they're scared of it, so they feel overwhelmed. But then the other group that I have to deal with, this other family, is the ability of the end user. Who is the end user that you think I would be dealing with? The survivors, the people. Are you willing to read instructions that are like 5 pages long? Are you willing to read the IRS manual, because that's what they love to print in government, for you to fill out a form? And then they make you fill out 15 of them because one department can't use the other department's form, but 14 out of the 15 questions are all identical except for one. And quickly in our mind in technology, can't we just reduce that? Oh, let's create one form with 16 questions. Whoa, careful now. That's just mind-boggling. That's overwhelming for some people. So we bring it back down. Unfortunately, my gas gauge or my speedometer can't go 9.5 miles an hour. It tends to add a zero, like 90.5 maybe. But it reminds me of the importance that we have to bring this down for the middle, for the end users, but also the middle users, the people who are developing, using them, or analyzing the information. And we can slowly build that. We can slowly bring that education out. How many of you have this on your desk? An old globe, picture frame. I don't know if IMGUR is, but I've never heard that one. But LinkedIn, Pinterest, YouTube. I give this to someone at the university who is old school. So I know there's some university people here, so I don't want to offend anyone, but there's some old school people on campus. Anybody know what Pine is? What's Pine? Email, yeah. It was kind of partly created at the University of Washington. We have some people that I have to deal with daily who still use it. So I can't send them HTML-based documents with maps. I actually have to send them a link and this and that, and they have to get to it. I'm like, wait a second, you're still using Pine? Are you testing something? No, this is what I use every day. Are you willing to, no, I will not fight. They fight, they fight, they fight. Okay, do you have a smartphone? Not a chance. So how do you bring this together? How do you change and identify, look, these tools are now replaced with one small little device. You can do all these things. We need to adapt and adjust to that. And we need to make sure that we tell our audience that difference. Anybody ever see this picture? It's really kind of bad to see in here. It's the escalator of sharks underwater in the subways in New York City during Hurricane Sandy. This would be awesome if it happened here in Seattle in the tunnel. Can you imagine? Nobody would take the tunnel ever again. Metro would be broke, and we'd have to pay like $500 million more in our taxes, easily. But how do we monitor this? And we get this question. It's the same type of question, or the nervousness that we get from government or new people who have that public facing response. I don't know if I could do that, because what if someone posts a fake picture? Okay, what if someone yells out in a crowd, fire? What happens? Same thing. We have to go through the validation process. The tools, the capabilities, the protocols, they're all there. They're already there for us to use and understand. We need to be adaptive. And most people that deal in this kind of situation are challenged by being adaptive. Yet they're pretty adaptive when you call them to a disaster and you send them to the middle of Katrina right before the hurricane happens and says, I'm dropping you off, get off my airplane and deal with it. I was in that situation in Katrina. The pilot wanted to get his plane off the ground because he wanted to get home, because they were going to shut the airport down. We adjusted. We had crappy computers with Pentium 3s on them, and we had crappy software, but we managed. And unfortunately, we managed the best we could, but what was the public media face of Katrina? A disaster. It was a total devastating disaster, and I admit it was. It was hard, but yet the tools that we were using, because of the problems we were having with the tools, the technology, and the capabilities, hampered our ability to respond. Now I get embarrassed when I see departments, I'm like, you're not doing, wait, what? That's a 3-ring binder. What's that thing? Did you have a nuclear disaster that just erased everything on technology? Or, no, this is what we use. And they print every day new sheets, they put it in, because that's the routine. How do we change that? How do we adapt that capability? Oops. So here's some cool things we can do. So some of the things we did for Haiti. Haiti had very poor maps, and so responders were going to Haiti to help in the process. They were trying to go there and do good things, but they didn't know where to go. So we were able to make sure that we had the data, satellite imagery from the military came to us, we mapped it. Guess what? I've never been to Haiti, but we mapped it. Because we had imagery, we had the computers, we had the technology, and we had limited network connectivity at Haiti, but we had a lot of connectivity at home. We put it all together and we mapped it. Haiti has one of the most extensive maps now. Every one of these X's is reported damage. All the exclamation points are reported damage with people who need help. You can see hospital locations and clinics. You can see, if you zoom in, you can see potholes. You can see pothole covers and who owns the pothole cover, because you realize how nice the satellites are and go, that's kind of scary. But you're able to identify things, and now people knew if you could drive a 40-ton crane or not. But what's really cool about this is now Haiti has a map to help economic recovery, because they can tell where people are. They can tell where all the hazardous material is, all the pathways. This could be used after the disaster, and it has. This is how we kind of did it. You can see all the different square boxes. Red ones mean there's more people needing help to analyze the data, so you'd zoom into that. You register yourself doing that square. You'd work with another person, chat with them over the software, and identify things. And you just go row by row, latitude, longitude, and then they get covered. So it's kind of like a heat map of percentage. How many remember in Sandy the issue of gas? This was a really cool experience. I've never had this happen to me before. It was pretty cool. I get a text message. I'm at the office, UW, and it says, can you join a White House conference call at 1400 hours? I'm like, okay, who's playing a joke with me? So I called the number. It said, this is the White House switchboard. We recognize your phone number. We're transferring you to the call. I'm like, hello? We got there. We went in. We were in the conference room. We were in the Situation Room, the White House, with the National Incident Commander for the President of the United States. I was like, are you kidding me? And I forgot I was on mute, not on mute. Oh. And they asked us, how can Crisis Commons help them in disaster response? They asked a couple other technology, virtual technical communities to help out. And I said, we can do a gas map, but we don't have to crowdsource it. We don't have to ask the people to do it. We can ask ourselves, wait a sec, there's infrastructure. How many of you see the satellite dish on top of all the gas stations? Do you know how gas stations get filled with fuel? It's not the guy at the counter going, or if you're in Oregon who's pumping your fuel, it's the computer. Wait, there's a computer? That must mean it might be attached to the internet. So that means it's telling me something that I can look at and say, oh, we're low on fuel, we need to send another truck. Do we need to send super, regular, diesel, unleaded? Well, let's get that. Well, this is what this is. We got access to one of the fuel networks, and we were able to map it because it had all the lats, the longitudes, the addresses, if they were open and if they had fuel or not, and if they had generators. Ooh, that was kind of nice because no one had power. So in the registration, everyone had if they had generators or not. So we built a map. Quick, easy, simple. More Oklahoma, same thing. You start putting data together. You start grabbing it from different sources, and you can start figuring out, hey, wait a sec. Here's the social dynamics of this community, and this is where the damage was. Let's put it on top of each other and go, we need to focus on this square block, because this is where there was low-income housing people who are on food stamps, who have social economic issues, who have bad education, who need better help. Rather than this 2 blocks have million-dollar homes and families who have second homes and who have plenty of support that they need. Let's balance that. Let's provide correct responses. Anybody ever use the flight radar map on their iPhone, the iPad app? I love this thing. I'm on the airplane yesterday, 2 days ago, coming back from Chicago. This little girl's first time on the plane. She's like, oh, cool. Nervous and everything. She's taking off. She's holding everyone's hand. She grabbed my. So then I showed her where we were on the airplane, on the map, flying. And there's this cool little button you can hit 3D, so you see now the front vision of the plane, kind of where it's going over on the Google map. I lost my iPad pretty much for about an hour. She's just like constantly looking at it. But what a great way for us to get information, because information's available. So I do that. Here's maps. This is one of the maps that I monitor every day, constantly. It tells me what's going on around the world. Someone in Hungary maintains it. They created it in Hungary, in a whole other country that no one was like, what? But it's there for us. It tells us things. And sometimes you'll get some really weird ones on there, like there was a hazmat spill from a semi-truck in Wisconsin. Like, how did this get into the system? Well, because some tools are using open standards, and it automatically grabs and feeds those things. Could you imagine getting this kind of a map for us? Well, that's what I'm building for the university for every country that we have operations in. Because then I can go instantly and go, this is what's going on. Yeah, there's weather. Oh, they're having a rainstorm. They're having a flood. Oh, there's this. And how many people do we have there? What's going on? Whose Twitter account can I trust in that area? I have a feeling we hire a cab driver in Nairobi constantly because that's the cab driver we all use. I want to get the guy to Twitter. Get him a phone. Let him tweet. Because then I can know what's going on in Nairobi because I know who's in your cab today, who's not, what's traffic like, what kind of problems are we going to face. I get ground truth to help better the response. I'm sure you guys have a lot of you, oh, look, hey, Pandora, woo. That's unfortunate. The iPad doesn't recognize them in full screen. So Transmap, I'm sure people have seen. Here's a good map or a picture of the Hurricane Sandy and how the differences between disasters in the United States happen versus around the world. You can see the heat sensitivity of it just by not being able to read it, but just see the differences that are there compared to what Hurricane Sandy is, that big dot with the big surrounding side, and you can kind of see the overlaying layer. It's almost a third of the page. That's kind of scary, but it kind of also tells us where the information comes from, how powerful social media is within the United States and Canada alone. So how do we harness that in 2 different ways? How do we harness it to better response in the United States and Canada, but also how do we use it better to help other areas around the world who are jumping and leapfrogging years and generations of technology to use it to help better that, so they don't have to go through the same mistakes we've made or others. Oklahoma, a couple weeks ago during the first tornado, people knew that they needed help. So before the Salvation Army got there, piles of water were starting there. Those are good things to donate because they can use them. But the piles of clothing that people were donating, they can't do anything with it. It just goes to waste. And so through social media, we're able to help educate faster what type of things to donate. And it's true. Cash is the best thing. It just depends on where you put that cash. You know, you can donate to the Red Cross. It's a great way of putting that, and they put the money directly to the places they need to. You know, the Salvation Army is the same way. But it's those little people that come out and kind of scam you that causes a challenge. But how do you get information out? How do you get process? Little tweets like this can do amazing things to communities. Then you can also have mistakes. How many remember this? I love this from the Super Bowl. You can still dunk in the dark. And what was funny is my first reaction was, I wonder if Oreo's behind the power outage. Because you'd think in an advertising agency, this was probably thought out 6 months in advance. Here's our strategy, here's our campaign, here's our process. Nope. This was someone sitting behind a computer on a small team at the Oreo whatever PR factory and going, let's watch the football game and just see how our commercials go for all the other stuff we do and monitor that traffic. And they're sitting there and he probably goes, wait a second, we can just click, 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 click. Done. Huge free money process. How can we do that with the humanitarian process? How can we do that by harnessing all the people's times? Anybody know where this is? the Vatican. See a difference? I think our Vatican, you know, the Pope now has a Twitter account. It's awesome. I'm like, wait a second, I'm following the Pope with a Twitter account. This is pretty cool. I haven't seen anybody do any Hail Marys or anything yet, but you know, it's a different way of communicating. It's a different way of adapting to the people. This is an image that really goes to the mindset of people who are very against it. I can't remember what name of the family group it was, the guy who sits behind someone else doing social media. This is the tool that helps them go, oh, wait a sec, they're doing it, maybe I should do it. My dad now has an iPhone. I'm like, yes, finally. My dad's a violin maker, so he's very into old school process. This is another one that I use a lot to help demonstrate. CNN. Can anybody see what the difference of CNN is now compared to the past? I mean, cool graphics and all that aside. What's the one thing on here that shows that CNN has changed? Yes, the red line on the bottom. Boston PD tweet, suspect in custody, officer sweep. CNN is using the same tools we can to find out what's going on. We're now changing the game. I think the news media companies are a little scared about what's going on with social media and how information goes, how to do that. How many of you saw the Skagit Brig collapse? You know, King 5 News, 4.5+ hours of live TV. I'm like, really, guys? It's already over. Marcus Darian was the PIO, the Public Information Officer for that event. I was tweeting with him 30 seconds after he got called and assigned as the PIO for the event, saying, hey, do you need help in that process? Old school, it's gone. It's changing. New school, iPhone, technology, capabilities, whatever it is. By the way, that's us Skyping in the middle of nowhere, Texas, with a Verizon MiFi card in the camper. What is this? What do you think this means? No, actually, it's a military. It's a naval. The little guy has amplification. The little guy can share information. Can you imagine the mechanic for a Carnival cruise saying, the reason why the motor caught on fire was the headquarters didn't want to pay for this? You know, hashtag Carnival Cruises. How fast would that get out? Obviously, you'd probably get terminated pretty quickly, but now the change of the investigation, the information. I'll skip this. Everyone knows the power of all the big tools. You're all here for that. 50 million? No, 50 billion, excuse me. Get my zeros mixed up with all that money. It's all that money I have in my pocketbook at home. Why can't we have some good disaster apps and capabilities with this? You know, if you think of the popularity of, 1/10%, how much value that would be for us out of that 50 billion if we can do great things. I took this picture in Toronto at a crisis camp or Crisis Commons board meeting. Really represents drinking from a fire hose. I mean, drinking fountain and a fire hose and a fire extinguisher right underneath it. It was a perfect setup picture. I didn't touch it. How many of you feel like this with digital media? Too much going on, too much information. Well, unfortunately, we have to deal with that. This is what I really like my desk to look like, but instead it actually looks like something else I'll show you. But this can be managed, and it doesn't have to be managed in person. It can be managed by something virtually. And in the disaster world, we've been creating this thing called VOS, a Virtual Operations Support Team. You don't need to be in the fire or at the fire to manage information to help. I can tell you what the weather is from far away and just radio it in or email it or tweet it in and communicate. I can tell you what traffic's like. I can tell you what the airlines are flying above, what the flight pattern is. I can tell you that information from remote. So why should I risk my life going there, spend all this government money to get there and the hotel and everything else when I can just do it at my desk or at home? When I have a desk that looks like this. Soon. My wife is slowly getting there, but I only have 9 right now. It's because I can manage information that way. You can put information in a way to monitor what's going on and seeing those things. And it's that process of how you do it. Because at the same time, this is my internet connection. 600 megs down, 300 megs up. At a fire in the middle of nowhere, it's 20K up, maybe 3K down. Maybe. And it's intermittent. So why not use the resources? One of the resources we did for Washington, remember the Wenatchee fire last year? We had a lot of students in grade school. We had a lot of people, elderly, getting sick because of the smoke and the inhalation of that. So we created what's called the Washington Smoke Blog with the National Forest Service. And all the PIOs for the local county health departments were able to input their information directly by an email. So they didn't really have to do much. We did all the technology for them. And now Oregon, Washington, Idaho, Utah, Wyoming, Montana, and the DC office want to create this for every state in getting that process. Google Glasses, whole new world, whole new dimension. I'm waiting for mine. I'm trying to steal a buddy of mine's, but there's this really big policy, black and white, you sign for the Google Glasses. The Oklahoma tornado, this was the first tornado that happened. The amount of damage, but you see the difference between the damages of the two? There's a really cool project that came out last year for Sandy called Mapmill. And everybody ever heard of the Civil Air Patrol? Civil Air Patrol is kind of like the reserves of the Air Force. They use local retired, but also you can join just yourself, and it's like the Coast Guard Reserve. They have the Army Reserve. You spend a little bit of time. You fly in a military aircraft. It's a Cessna still, just says Civil Air Patrol. But we mounted a camera to it. Civil Air Patrol can actually fly still during FAA restrictions. So during 9/11, the Civil Air Patrol was still flying. They're the only aircraft that could fly. So patients were able to still get around and get through things. Well, during the hurricane, we flew Civil Air Patrols in a grid pattern, took thousands and thousands of photos at high resolution, put them on a map, and set up a website for people, any person to go to. And they would get 5 pictures in a row. You take the first one, no damage, moderate damage, heavy damage. And they would run through those 5 pictures quickly, taking them probably 3 seconds, 4 seconds to do the whole thing. Click, click, click. And then if you wanted to, you can get 5 more pictures. In under 40 hours, we went through every damaged photo in the hurricane for FEMA, faster than they could ever have done it. We analyzed it 4 times for every single photo. So if you put no damage, it would only go through a couple times. If you put heavy damage, it would go through up to 4 times from 4 different people to make sure that it was analyzed and averaged into the process. Set up a heat map, gave it back to FEMA, said, here's your response. Done all for free, all done, all open source. They did it for Oklahoma. What a great tool. This is what disasters really should be like. You know, when it floods, you still eat, right? You still need to have fun. You still need to do things. So please, if you see someone having fun in a disaster zone, let them know. It's a stress relief. It's a capability. I'm looking forward to my invite to that table. Obviously, as an emergency preparedness person, I talk about, are you ready? How many of you have a flashlight with you right now? How many of you have medication prescriptions? I don't want to know what you're taking, but have enough to handle 3 days' worth if you were stuck here. Do you have enough of that? Do you have a copy of your prescription? Do you have knowledge of your emergency plan on how to get home, the emergency phone number? How many of you use the auto dial on your iPhone and forgot the phone number of your kid's phone? It's just you push the button and go, oh, call kid. Huh, Jen? Yeah. You gotta make sure you know the phone numbers. Do you have that information? How many of you are wearing heels? Do you have shoes that you could walk 5 miles in out of the city to get home? Maybe you live on the east side? There's not going to be any bridges. You don't have to pay a toll. It's free now because they're going to be gone. You're going to have to walk all the way down the Renton, or you're going to have to walk all the way up to Bothell to get over to Bellevue. Are you ready for that? Thinking those things in that preparedness process. So this comes to my last point, and then I think there's 2 more slides of fun stuff. The humanitarian toolbox is something that Crisis Commons and some other nonprofits and Microsoft are starting to work on, and we're incorporating it into larger groups. It's the ability for us to build tools that can last over time, built by volunteers. Because there's a lot of people who want to volunteer and do things. You can do great things from your home and your office, but you can't afford the time, or you don't have the experience, or you don't have the connections to get to Haiti to respond in an earthquake. And personally, and I say this nicely, we don't want you there, because we want to make sure that you have food, you have housing, you have the needs you have. We don't have enough of that as it is with the responders that can go. So what can you do? You can help us. You can help us build tools that we can do that. But do you have to be just a developer? No. Because we need project managers. You need PR people. You need the ability for people to go, hey, you know what, your user interface, this doesn't work for disabilities, or this doesn't work, or people don't like this way. People, this is the latest craze. Do a vertical alignment of your buttons versus this. Don't make it too complex. Remember, they're survivors. There's all sorts of those capabilities you can do on your own time for free at home for half an hour versus someone spending 5.5 hours has no idea what they're doing trying to figure out that same tool. So we're trying to harness that virtual community, that capability of putting things together to build an app so it can be maintained over time. One of the first ones we're trying to do is for the United States and Canada is a damage assessment app, so that there's one app you can go to, but multiple people can grab it through APIs, and you can report damage. So if you're in Wisconsin driving through a tornado, happened to me, and you don't know what county you're in, but yet the radio's spitting out you're in this county, you can say, I have sea damage, I get information, you can push it in, and it gets filtered through. It's an application built to be designed for the end user, not the middle people, not the government agencies, not the organizations. So there's a lot of projects in there we're trying to build out. We're in a beta release, and we're trying to get it all done by September, but it's all volunteer. But it's the ability of how many hours you think we could harness. That's what's really cool. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. I know I'm a little bit over time as usual. Jen's over back there like, evil eyes. Just, I probably gave Jen a heart attack because I didn't put my slides up till late last night. And I tend to do that to her pretty much most of the time. Am I the only one? Okay. But if you need anything as well, you're always welcome to email me, and I'm happy to help.